am Marwan Cameron, and this is the Conduit. All right, y'all. It's another beautiful day in Kitsap County, 56 degrees on this Wednesday, September 29th. I hope you had a fruitful day, as always. Today's been a super busy day for me. Unfortunately, I don't think I've gotten up from this chair. I'm on the ball now all day. Matter of fact, yesterday, I wore a tie for 14 hours. It was a long day. Maybe I need to go back and work in an office somewhere. I am grinding. It seems like I'm getting busier and not, I was told by some folks today I got to get to figuring out some healthcare. So some healthcare, some wellness, some personal time. But this is personal. I take this personal, and that's why I put so much into it. It's personal to me. I want to be in a better community, in a better society. I don't want to see people around me suffering and hurting. I want to leave a place for my daughter where she can thrive and not have to face and deal with the things that I had to deal with. And I want her children, should she be so blessed, to have it even easier than she has it. So in order to do that, that means that I have got to continue. I was telling Okoye last weekend, I said, it just seems like evil never rests, and evil doesn't rest. But we're tired, but we got to keep on going. So, my favorite church song is "They That Wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like an eagle. They shall run and not faint." So we got to keep on going. But let me go ahead and bring Okoye on, because we got a good show for you tonight. How you doing there, Okoye?
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing this evening?
How was your day? Tell us about your Wednesday today.
Oh man, today was kind of challenging, dealing with some health issues with my mom, and health is declining, and dealing with the hospice team coming in, and everyone just trying to navigate this journey that we're on at end of days, and what that really feels like. Everybody's kind of processing it and different ways. Everybody's grieving in different ways. And so just taking it 1 hour at a time. Not really one day, but 1 hour at a time. And we're thankful and we're blessed to be able to have this time with my mom. Not everyone gets this opportunity, and so I'm learning through the process, and just been talking with one of my good friends and neighbors back there. Miss Kimberly called me from Washington State. She lives right next door to me, and she had lost her husband at the beginning of the summer to cancer as well. And so um, she was able to really encourage me through this journey, through the process. And we spoke about this is something that we really don't want to run away from. And so, the conversation was very healing and very rich. And so I'm reflecting, I'm meditating on a lot of the things that she shared with me, and her lived in experience with it with her husband, and when her husband went on to be with the Lord. And you know we've been having some really rich conversations about what life and death is for all of us, even in the midst of COVID and a pandemic, with so many families losing loved ones, and sometimes it's very rapid, and then sometimes they have to prolong their suffering with it. And so yeah, that's kind of what my day is. And then, of course, I'm going to school at Evergreen State College. Had a wonderful session with my professors. Um, Wonderful lyceum with Dr. Dexter Gordon and Dr. Shepard and Dean Tatarunga. And so they have encouraged me to to just stay the course and step into this learning environment that could be so healing for me during this time. And so to stay the course and encourage me to stay.
Well, let
Um,
me ask you some questions, Okoye. First, let's shout out Reverend Ellington. I should say Pastor Ellington now. Congratulations, Pastor. I got to get used to calling you Pastor now.
Hello, Pastor Ellington. Congratulations. And we know that you will serve these souls. And so, congratulations. You've stepped into the highest calling there is. And so, we commend you for that.
And we also want to say hello to Tony Wallace. It is good to see men on the conduit.
Yeah.
That kind of goes hand in hand with tonight's issue, which we're going to get into. But the question I have for you, Okoye, before we get into tonight's issue, because our whole theme is centered around emergency management, emergency preparedness, and so many things fit in that umbrella, right? And so right now, you can't prepare for all the things that you're going through, right? I mean, right now, you do so much here locally, and your plan is to wake up in the morning, Lord willing, and go on your mission. Class started today for you, so you'd be attending Evergreen, but instead you're on the East Coast, separated from your husband. You're taking care of your family, right? You deal with the flood.
Yeah.
A personal friend got hit by a car, and you're doing, you're praying for her, and you can't physically be there to support her right now. So all of these things are going on that you're talking about. But school started today, and you were in class, and at the same time, you were in our weekly meeting, right? So you're doing all these things. What can you give to people that's tangible, outside of, hey, you just pray and you're faithful? What is it that you tangibly do to keep putting one foot in front of the other?
What's tangible always is love and compassion and patience and being able to meet people where they're at and be able to have these conversations. And no, you might not always have the answers or the solutions, but to show genuine concern and genuine love and genuine compassion for your friends, your family, your loved ones, even a stranger. And that's something that there's nothing that can top that. We can serve in many ways, and we can be a resource, and we can do these things, but when it comes down to it, love trumps everything. you know in the time of need, love will trump it all.
And I don't by any means want to discount prayer and faith. So I want to be clear on that. I know that I'm very critical of the church, and particularly the Black church. I have high expectations, for our folks and our pillars, our keystones of our community. So I have high expectations. So I'm extremely critical of that. But by no means am I saying, don't pray, don't be faithful, because my dad advocated for that. He's the strongest man that I ever knew, and he had overcome so much pain, so much trial and tribulation, but he was the most at peace person that I knew while he was going through the things. And I can never understand how he was so resilient in that way. And it's like, but Dad, this happened, Dad, that happened. And he's like, well, son, it is what it is. And, I give it to God, and, I'm just a faithful servant. And I didn't understand that because there was no tangible, right? It's like, what's the steps? Give me the 1, 2, 3, 4. But what I saw in my adulthood thinking back was, well, the tangible was he got up, he thanked the Lord, and then he took his shower, he got dressed, and he did the steps, and he did serve with love, right? He loved the community. So he loved the kids that he taught. He knew that he was making a change and a difference in their lives. And if he wasn't present, then they weren't going to have that. So he needed to be there. And then by that way, he was filled up and then was given strength to continue on and then stayed prayerful and stayed
Yeah.
faithful. And that's what did it. So, a lot of times we have conversations with folks, and because I know that I've struggled when I was younger with that, I know that there are people that struggle with it now. We all struggle with it now, right? You can have the most powerful relationship with Christ or whoever your higher power is, and have those times when you're feeling diminished, right? That you're feeling, hopeless. But thinking about it in times when you're not in that space, I think is important, because it gives you that tool to really kind of lean on and use in times of trouble when you actually need it. Do you agree with that statement?
I agree with much of that, but I'm gonna say what uh, love is gonna be tried. We struggle with love every day. You know, life presents itself, challenges come up, discord or divisions and hatred and malice. And as we have to live through those, you know, are going to struggle in the area of love and charity and compassion and humanity, and all of that comes along with it, because we have to learn how to love one another. And that is not an easy thing in the midst of a lot of chaos, confusion, turmoil, greed, hatred. Now, there's so many different um, barriers and things that get in the way for us to really walk in love, because sometimes it's hard for us to forgive offenses and forgive arts and forgive incidents that we've been wounded and hurt and damaged and traumatized by, and so to walk in love becomes now a challenge. It becomes something that is difficult for many, because they cannot let those roots of bitterness or hatred or even unforgiveness, they can't walk in them, and so they wrestle with it, they toil with it, and so we have to have some real good conversation about that love walk and why it's challenging and why we can't do it, and why it's so um the word I want to use is so complicated, for us to walk in love and walk in charity, walk in those ways. What's up with that?
So you might be establishing maybe the crux of our problem all the way around
Yeah.
uh, in tonight's topic. So let me go ahead and start to lay that out tonight. Okay. Uh, it's no secret what I feel about our churches, right? And I don't mean our churches that are just local here to Kitsap County, but I'm talking about nationwide, right? I submit that in the 20s and 30s and the 40s of the 1900s, that we were far more resilient. We were far more a community. The family structure was more intact during those times, and the church really was the keystone of the Black community. And as time goes on, there's a lot of competing things that have happened that I think have eroded the church really being that pillar and that cornerstone, right? So some of that is, the fact that they became 501. I think the 501c3s. There, I mean, they got that nonprofit status that kind of started to take the teeth away, right? We'll give you this money, but you can't really, come against, the office here, speak out so much, right? That was one. Obviously we had the women's movement, we had the civil rights movement. And as we kind of moved on, we had all these different things that happened, and some things are external, right? So now you have single family households because the war on Black folks never stopped, right? We had the prison industrial complex. So if men are being locked away in mass, and then the government comes in and gives, social benefits, and then when the man gets out, well, you can't live there, right? You're creating that dynamic. We know through history, I can't remember the man's name, who had, the blueprint to destroy the black family, right? And so that was active, putting crack into our neighborhoods and things like that. All these things happened to erode what we had, and now we find ourselves here. And so there was a point in time where, you know, when I was growing up, right, there was Vacation Bible School. Most of the church folks, they knew who I was. They could discipline me. They could whoop me. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't an abuse. It wasn't, hey, don't be touching my child and don't be doing this. Everybody had respect, and you didn't have to worry about, is my child safe at, Mama and Papa Towns's house, right? You knew that they were safe. You knew they were good, and it was going to be okay. And if, mom or dad had to go to work and couldn't be home and you were a latchkey kid, you were okay. You were safe, right? Folks knew who you were. And it's like, all right, I'm gonna tell Mr. Karen now. And you would tighten right on up, right? If they didn't get you. My principal in third grade was Ora Franklin, and she was a mentor of my father. She had a paddle with holes in it and would whistle when she whipped you, woo, pow. And this old skinny black woman, and Okoye, I tell you, she about hit as hard as my dad did, and you didn't want to catch a beating at school, right? And this is a public school. This is John Muir in Seattle, Washington, right? When I was in third grade, when I was 9. So we're talking about 1982. This wasn't that long ago.
That's right.
But it was a different time, right? So that sense of community was there. And Ora Franklin didn't go to Mount Zion of Seattle, Washington, right? She actually went to another church, as far as I know. So, that community was there. Vacation Bible School was there. That teaching was there. That support was there. And Vacation Bible School wasn't all about the Bible. It was about, worldly things too that were really important. So how do we get back what we lost? And before you answer that, want to say welcome to Mark. Mark says churches have been able to evolve at the same rate as social movements. Definitely agree with that. So go ahead, Okoye, jump in there.
Well, one of the things that I've always said is that our community, when you talk about the Jim Crow and you talk about the history and you talk about the foundation and the power of the churches, our churches is what built our communities. And those foundational principles that we had when we were growing up and when my parents were growing up, they understood their role. And their role was to support, and their role was to empower, and their role was to provide service. Their role was to equip. They understood their role as Black churches and as faith-based organizations to help to build and strengthen their community, the African American community. Education came out of that community. Social economic developments came out of those community. All kinds of disciplines came out of our churches and our faith-based organization. Because when we think about the history, how when we were enslaved people, that the church was the first organization where we were given liberties and freedom, which we really weren't given liberties and freedom, but we began to build those liberties and freedom within that organizational structure, because we were only allowed by our masters to be able to go to church and to worship and to praise God. So our churches began to be places of liberation for us as enslaved Black people within this colonized structure that we were enslaved in this nation. And so we have to understand history and the role that our churches played for us. That's why our churches and our communities were so strong during that time. It's because where there's unity, there's strength, and we were unified by having that place, that what I call that sanctuary, to be able to empower and uplift one another, and freedoms to worship and praise and to read and to write. We weren't allowed to read and write, but those were the institution, our churches were those spaces where we got all of that nurturing and all of that support from. And so, as you said, this is different times. Of course, this is different times. Our families have been severed. We look back at the civil rights movement and what was embedded in our communities, drugs and alcohol. Those were targeted things. Our men were they were criminalized and thrown into the penal system at atrocious rates, and those were all constructed things to destroy the strength and the unity of the Black community. And then, of course, when you talk about the construct and of not just the Jim Crow, but the construct of the Willie Lynch, syndrome, and how Willie Lynch laid it all out. And this is how you can control, and this is how you can have power and still dominate this Black, even though on the books we say we've emancipated them, but
well, let me ask you a question, Okoye. Let me ask you a question. Mark has a question for you. Do churches actually build community, or do they provide a place where community develops?
It's both. It's both. It's both. Those are interdisciplinaries. You can't have one without the other, because we've always built and we've always had a place. We created that space to do that. So I don't see how you can have one without the other, but
All right. Let's go ahead and welcome Sal. Sal, how you
doing? I love the air horns. I love them.
How you doing there, sir?
I'm good. Hello to you. Hello, Karen. Hello, Okoye.
Hey.
So, Sal, you want to just kind of give yourself a brief introduction as to who you are, and then we'll get into tonight's question?
Absolutely. My name is Sal DeRosalia. I currently live on Bainbridge Island. I do a bunch of equity work in the Kitsap County, Western Washington community. And I'm actually driving home from the court in Port Orchard because they had National Expungement Week. And so people were there getting their old criminal histories vacated. They were there getting penalties and fines reduced to the bare minimum, so that they can actually move forward with the rest of their lives. There were people there who were felons today who left that building not felons anymore. And they will claim back their voting rights and all the rights they lost when they got branded a felon. And a lot of those people today were Black and brown. Historically, those are the communities that suffer the most from that. And so I was hearing you all talk about kind of the deconstruction of community and kind of the construction of the criminal justice system and being able to put away people at a staggering rate. And that is true. And it's also true that there are some good people doing some work to undo that as well right now. So, but I'm Sal. Thank you.
Got that right. So
thank you for that.
I got to applause because men showed up tonight. All right. So I've been doing this show for a while. We got Sal, we got Mark, we got Pastor Ellington, we got Tony. Rob's always in the house. But this is the most men that have been in the space and been present and actively in the chat. And we need that, right? That has been a missing piece of the equation if we're going to get back to where we need to get to, right? Men have to be present, and we can't be afraid to be present. But tonight's question, and we wanted to build you into this, is this. And I'll put up Mark's next question. We all sit on the Kitsap Public Health Equity Board, and we were in the meeting yesterday, and we were talking about methodology, things that we can do to effectively reach, the folks in the community, right? Especially hard to reach folks, and cut through the noise and also create a space of dialogue. After that, as we know, there was a protest going on, and there's a statement that was put out by the SUJ something, I think it's the Kitsap Social Justice. I'm not sure who they are. I think you're part of that, Okoye, or connected to it in some way. And I do need to respond to that. And whether those folks are white nationalists or white supremacists. I don't know if they're all that. We find a way to establish some dialogue. And at the same time, I also believe this. There are plenty of black folks that actually feel the same way about the vaccine. And you have to acknowledge that too. So we cannot just scapegoat it and say, well, because white nationalists and white supremacists believe this way, then we can discount it and we don't need to, take into account what it is that they're saying. So, I wanted to interview them. I had a quick conversation with them. I hope some of them come on to the show and we can have that dialogue and have that conversation, right? Because at some point, we've gotta find a way to cut through. We have to do it, and it's going to take us to do it. So we can't expect other folks to do it or wait around for someone else to do it. We have the power. We take power. We don't wait for it to be given. Anything that's given can be taken away. So we need to take it. Now, I digress. The whole thing is this. Based on that meeting yesterday, we were talking about how can we work together more effectively to and support each other, right? And we were talking about the conduit. And Sal, I'm just going to ask you to kind of, put that framework out, restate what you said yesterday, because I think that's important, and I don't want to step on your words there.
Oh, sure. So again, my name is Sal, and yeah, we're a lot of us in this room or in this meeting. We're part of the Kitsap Equity Collaborative, and so basically, what I was saying yesterday is that what I see is that I'm in a lot of different groups. I get to participate in different levels of these groups. Most of them are, Black, Indigenous, people of color groups, and they're very scattered. And what I mean by that is, like the person at the top doesn't necessarily know where the resources are for their group in the rest of their county. And so as much as we're all trying to get there, there's no one single resource that I can go to, look up all these groups, see what they need, see who to contact, all these things. And the reason I brought that up is because I felt like we were all very scattered. And though we were all in that room together, I don't feel like we all know much about each other or about the other organizations that we're talking to in the room and how we can help each other, and how we may not be able to help each other. Oftentimes we're just wasting time because we're asking people to help us who can't. And then we get disenfranchised because we don't get to help. But it's really just because we didn't necessarily know where to look. So my suggestion was to create this repository, and some people call it a wiki or a website or whatever, where every group can contribute. This is who we are. This is what we consist of. This is our message. And also, these are the resources we have for our community. And whether this is a warming shelter, or we have 10,000 masks, or we know where the food drives are, or anything, it's just really bringing that community together. So almost, if you would call it like a race equity network.
All right. And I think that's important. Like, I didn't know about the event that was happening today, right? I could have talked about that and shared that out in my channel. And so I think that's just what Sal was saying. We were having a meeting earlier and talking about what tonight's conversation was going to be about. And I do want to challenge the Black churches. And there are a lot of them here, but I didn't know who is the current pastor of Emmanuel. Who was the pastor? What was the name of the church that's on Park Avenue? That's the Black church. What's the name of the church that's down on Lions Field? Right? So that, repository would be powerful to be able to go to a place and look that up and see where people can access those resources. We know when folks get tapped, they're going to reach out to the churches and nonprofits to see if they can help with lodging or with gas or a myriad of other things. But if we don't have a place to direct people and we don't know where to go, how are we ever supposed to actually grow and establish change? Okoye?
Thank you for that. Marwan, one of the things that we were talking about is our inability to work in a collective, collaborative way, and that is around base building, organizing, as well as strengthening relationships, because relationships is at the core of everything. It doesn't matter what organization that you come from. I know somebody, somebody knows somebody. It is all about relationship and who knows what and who has access to what and who has resources to what. So we know at the base of all of this, relationship building and trust building is core at the organizational level, as well as when we're talking about how we're going to unify and strengthen. Well, how are you going to unify and strengthen when we don't have good relationships, number one? And we have to sit down and talk about that too, because you and I have spoke about that on numerous occasions. Is that some of the reason why we cannot come together and work in a collective, collaborative way is because we've got stuff with one another. We've got issues with one another. We've got history with one another. The reason why we're dealing with race equity now is because the history of racism and the history of discrimination and the history of unjust practices in this nation has been historical from time immemorial. And so we come in and we want to do undoing racism or undoing institutionalized racism and not even knowing the core of how we got to where we are now. And that's cutting across all color lines. That's cutting across everything. That's just leveling the playing field on how we're going to come together in a unified collective way in our community, in our even in our families, even in our churches, our organizations. That levels it. And so let's start with having a conversation about that, because until we deal with that, we're not going to be able to get up here because we ain't did what needs to be done down here. So let's talk about that for a minute, Marwan. How come it's difficult for us to come together and strengthen and unify one another and work in that way? Because we grapple with this. I'm gonna just say we grapple with this. We're challenged with this on a daily tip. We challenge. So how do we have that conversation when I pick up the phone and I say, "Hey, Pastor so-and-so, hello. I've been ringing you and you ain't called me back. You ain't even, got to a place where you even respond to my call or call for response." Usually when there's a call, there should be a response. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. To answer, to give you just two, individualism versus collectivism,
Yeah.
Pastor Ellington and I had a conversation on a podcast about that, right? Capitalism, I think is one. We've gotten comfortable with achieving our part of the bag, right? We want the bag. Each generation wants to live easier and live better and provide more for their children, right? And unfortunately, there's been a lot that has been lost. Unfortunately, my dad passed away and his recipes went with him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The knowledge of the family tree is gone. It was with him. And although he never had any natural children of his own, and he adopted 17 of us, right? For us, at least for me growing up, it wasn't that important. I don't know these people. I've never seen these people. And I got to get to a point where I actually even think of them as my people. But now that's gone. And there's no way to get that back. Only my auntie is left, and she has some stories. But if we're not able to preserve the stories through her, it will be gone, right? So I think that's a huge one there. Is we used to have such respect for our elders, right? But then
Yes.
our elders actually deserve the respect. And I think that's a big one too. There's a lot of, children that had children, and you having a kid doesn't make you an adult, and it damn sure doesn't make you a mature adult. So now you've got 40, 50, and 60-year-olds they're grown, in age they're old, but in maturity they're underdeveloped. And so they're elders, but we can't listen to them, right? Because they don't have the lessons, they don't have the wisdom. So who do you follow? Who do you listen to? And I think that is one of the big ones that's eroded. Well, what's your thought on that? Because that might be a controversial statement there.
Well, first of all, our kids don't even know who they are or where they come from. They don't even know their own history. That first we have to understand their own history, where they come from, where they were born, who are their ancestors. Like today when I was talking with Professor Gilda Shepherd, and we were talking about the my culture, how diverse our cultures are, and my identity. When you talk about identity, what are you talking about? And I had to go back, I had to think about it, I had to begin to chart and revisit, where my identity as a black indigenous woman, my history, what do I know about myself, as far as, yeah, I'm an indigenous black human being. I come from the Cherokee, Seminole, Yoruba, Hebrew, Israelite, Cushite people. I was born in Richmond, Virginia, raised in Richmond and Willimantic, Connecticut. I'm the daughter of Lawrence A. Sowell and Joanna Piggy's granddaughter of Lillian Word and Walter Piggy's. I had to begin to understand who I am, where I came from, because my culture is very diverse, and that is in many different ways. We talked about, our socialization and how we form our cultures and our identity, because that's a piece of it too, and we need to understand, who are we, what has been our life experience, what has shaped us, what has formed us. And so when we're talking about all of these different things that really challenge us, and who we are and where we go and how we even connect with one another, we need to be starting from ground zero. Ground zero is, how you going to help somebody you don't even know who you are?
Let me respond to that. First out, I want to give you a shout out, because every fourth Saturday you have Villaging Our Voices, which is a very powerful experience. And I've been lucky enough to be available and prioritize that twice now. And in the first one, that was one of the questions was, where do you come from? Who are you? Right. And you're
Yes.
talking about knowing that history. And for me, this is one that I've always grappled with. Right.
Yes.
I know that at 16, my mother had me, and my grandparents did not believe in living in the house unmarried. So Buffalo, New York in January, she stayed with friends and couch surfed. She probably even stayed in the shelter. And then it got to the point where she had to give me up for adoption. So I went into foster care as a baby. And maybe one at the oldest. That I don't even know, right? And I lived in with a foster family until I was 5, until my father adopted me, and then I went back into foster care at 15. The last place I lived under being a ward of the state was the YMCA in downtown Seattle, and just decided, why am I still here? I might as well just do this on my own. So, again, with my adopted father being down and being passed away, and not being able to pull to that, and even that's not actually my bloodline, right?
Yeah.
What do I track back to, right? So what I'm from West Africa, and what does that mean, right? Who are my parents? Who are my grandparents? Who am I from? Am I from the Carolinas? Am I from Alabama? Am I, what does any of that mean? So for me, it's intangible for me to figure out, who am I and what does that mean. So what would you say for someone like that that's like, look, I still need to do the community building, I still need to do healing, but I don't have that to pull off of, right? You've got this rich history that you can draw from and lean on, and then pass down. It's just me and my 2 daughters, and my oldest daughter has 2 grandbabies. I have nothing to pull from that.
No, what I say to you is that you do have a rich, diverse culture. Your lived in experience, where you came from, where you was raised, what you've done. You've been a teacher, a mentor, an activist, all of those things have shaped you. And you talk about your culture, your identity. Those are part of your, that's part of your culture and identity as well. And so some people, they say, well, I don't know who I am. I can't go back and everything. I didn't know who I was. Oh, really? It was 2014 when I began to do this in-depth research of who I was with DNA. We have technology. There are ways to find out. There are records for you to be able to connect. And yes, you might not have been reared and raised with your lineage and your people and your family lines and everything, but you still, that blood still flows through your vein. And it's important to take time, just like we take time for everything else in our busy lives, whether it's our jobs, whether it's where we like sports and everything. We must take time to understand our culture and how diverse our culture is, and understanding who we are, and identifying who we are. You can tell me much about who you are right now. What have you done in your life, what you're doing now, the work that you're doing in community, all of that is your part of your identity and your culture. So I don't want everybody to get just hung up on their bloodlines, because yes, that is a piece of it. That's a piece of the shaping and the forming of your identity, but that's not all of who you are. And so we need to understand, and like I said, we need to understand, who are we as Black people in Kitsap County? What have been our lived in experience? What have we been immersed in? Where have we been reared? Or because we bring all of that to who we are, our identity here. And so when we're talking about, sitting down and talking about our culture and how we're going to connect, and how we can strengthen one another, we have to be transparent and honest about, where we are as a community of color in Kitsap County.
And so why I think that's really important, and I really wanted to kind of get into that a little bit, because you're trying to establish a baseline of where we need to begin, right?
Yes.
And there are folks that have similar experiences to mine, but there are people that do know their blood relatives. But
Yes, we do.
for whatever reason, those relationships are very toxic. They don't, interact with their family members, but they still have a culture and a history of where they came from, beyond that. And
Yep.
and I think that's important, to express that, just for fun. I did do my ancestry
Woo, look at you.
there. So as you can see, whoops, let me go back here. I am 34% Nigerian. I'm 18% Cameroon, Congo, West Bantu peoples. I'm 13% Benin and Togo. I'm 11%
Ooh.
Mali. I'm 6% French, 6% Ivory Coast and Ghana, 5% England and Northwestern Europe, 2% Norway, 2% Ireland, 2% Southern Bantu peoples, and 1% Italy. And it looks like we may have settled in the early North Carolina African Americans, or Mississippi and Alabama African Americans, and also Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama. So couldn't really nail that down, but it was interesting to do. I actually did this for my older daughter
Yes.
a few years ago, because I don't know, right? And
Yes.
so I in full disclosure, I don't really care about this, because I went through at such a young age going into foster care. I went through my kind of crisis of who I was at 11. And now, I was very upset with my birth mother. How could she give me up? And why wouldn't she fight for me? And all these things.
Yeah.
And I just got done telling someone this the other day. Yesterday, I was telling Tony, matter of fact. And she did the bravest thing that she could do, right? She knew that she couldn't take care of me, and she put me in a place where I could have a better life. And I think that was really powerful and tremendous, right? In Buffalo, New York right now, if anyone knows about upstate New York, Buffalo is ran down. It is the hood. So who is to say who I would be today if she kept me and I grew up there, right? And so being with my father, my adoptive father, put me on this path. And although I went through a bunch of hardships, many of which I made those decisions to go through, it those things have all created the person that you see before you now. And so I wouldn't change any of those things. And now I look at those things as a blessing. I look at those things as as you said, that lived experience, right? I allow folks to live through me kind of as an anecdotal story. of what went well and what didn't go well, right? So, hey, you know what? This is what I did and it worked. Hey, this is what I did and this didn't work. You know, you might not want to go down this path. And I think that's powerful. You know, and I tell folks that you know, if you get close to me, I'm going to let you in and see a side that you don't normally get to see. You know, folks know I have degenerative, you know, joint disease in my spine, and I live at a pretty high pain level, but no one gets to see that, right? But people need to see your shortcomings, right?
Yeah.
The places where you're not strong, where you are weak, where you are vulnerable, because what they're looking at is that put together piece, and he's this and he's that. And it's like, no. You know, you see it on Facebook, right? Everyone's life looks so miraculous on Facebook. It's like, they're a hot mess in the background if you only knew. You know what I mean? So I let folks in to see that because it's hard for them to figure out and how to climb. That's why I say, you know, it's so important to have that tangible piece. Let me go ahead and let Christina in. It's so hard for people to have that tangible piece on how they're trying to change their lives while they're in it, when it's like, but it's so perfect for you now. I heard the stories, but that's not you now. How did you get from there to there? I didn't show you. Like, it ain't great. Christina, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I don't know if you guys can hear me okay, but the topic drew me in.
All right, come on in.
I heard the debrief from Tuesday with Sal on, and then Akuye starting to lead into collective leadership, and Mark asking about building community. So why wouldn't I come in? So thank you for letting. I'm going to stay off video, but you can hear me okay, I hope.
Yes.
You're perfect. So go ahead, join the conversation.
Oh, you guys keep warm me up a little bit. Just keep the conversation going. I
All right, so let me warm you up, Christina. You know, let me ask you this question. You've been immersed in doing work within our community and everything. What has shaped you or moved you to be able to do what you do?
Oh man, that's a big question. So I think Akuye, the first is the curiosity, right? Keeping an open heart, and being willing to grow and flex, because I can't say that I know what I'm doing or what I'm trying to do, but I know what my values are, right? And I feel like I share that with two of you, and when we're in a call with Martita and Miss Deborah and with Sal. We're moving towards equity. We want people to feel like they're seen, heard, and that they can contribute, and that we are a resource. We are resource rich. We just need to know how to work together, right?
Yeah.
And heal. So that gives me hope that we're moving in that direction. And I don't have all the answers. You know, I'm always tripping over myself, and Marwana was mentioned. I don't do much. I just kind of listen to you guys, but I'm in this because I want change. I think that, you know, I want to make sure that when we talk about systems and equity in our systems, it's not just as is and kind of accommodating. It's what do we do to disrupt the way we think and unlearn some of the stuff that we didn't learn along the way. And I had a lot of unlearning to do. I'm coming into this work with a master's in business administration, and the value and the bottom line and the ROI, all that language is tied to things that are important, but it doesn't recognize the value of relationship and trusted relationships. So yeah, you warmed me up. That was a good question, Nikoye.
And by the way, guys, you know, if you don't know, you see her name pop up. She is typically the one who is supporting us in the chat and making sure that all my typos are corrected and the links are there and everything else. So she is what would be the opposite of Johnny on the spot? Jane, is it Jane on the spot? Because it's got to be a generic name, right? No, everything is always in the masculine. So, you know.
I'm okay. You tell me.
No, we definitely appreciate that. So right now, what I'm asking people to do in the chat is, because I'm about tangible. I want to talk about the issue, We can complain about it, we can cry about it, we can be angry about it, but at some point we also need to move forward, right? I mean, we got to understand it in order to fix it, but then we want to do it. So I'm asking folks in the chat to please submit your ideas below. What's tangible for us to move on? So number one was choose to work together. Number two, Mark, who's gone now, said provide a way, a place, an event where people and organizations can come together and begin the conversation. And his organization will be planning an event in January. And as that comes out, I will share that. And one of the things that I will share with you in a conversation that he and I had is we can protest. And, you know, he is an environmentalist and what is it, like an emergency preparedness person, right? And you can protest, and you can protest, and that's the fight, right? But at some point, you do need to do some community building. So even Mark is thinking about a different way to look at this from another lens and saying, hey, you know what? Well, why don't we make it more of a gathering, a community thing where it's inviting and people can come in and learn and ask questions and have that experience that way, which is different, right? And so if we're going to change, we got to change our mindset. And that's a big deal, right? Because we can just keep doing the same thing. We can go out and keep on marching. And, you know, next year looks just like last year and the year before that. So that's huge. So what would be a number three then? What is a tangible, either Christina or Okoye, that we can type in the chat there as the third tangible to do? Oh, someone already put learning who we are. So what's number 4?
When you talk about tangibles, we've got a lot of example of tangibles in our community that people are doing now. This Conduit is a tangible. Am I correct? Villaging Our Voices are a tangible. It's not that we don't have tangibles. It's how do we come alongside and become a part and support and come in and be able to have the dialogue with us. One of the things that I've learned in Kitsap County is that it's not that we don't have tangibles. It's just that we do our tangibles in silos.
Okay.
So that is a problem.
I'm sorry. That's what Sal was saying before he dropped off, right?
Yeah.
And Sal is really good for that. You know, I don't know Sal very well. I haven't even met him in person yet. So I only know Sal in this space. And one of the kind of recurring things about Sal that I actually appreciate is as we are doing the work and talking about the issues that exist, he is very quick to point out, hey, there are people that are doing the work. We don't want to discount the work and the effort that they have been doing. And I know that I've felt that way. I know we've talked about that in several meetings where it's like people don't know the work that you've done. We had Tracy Flood on last week, and we talked about, you know, one of the questions was, you know, people didn't feel like she was doing a lot in the community, right? And she had an emotional response to that. And so we can all feel that way. We're all working really hard. Like I was saying, I think I had my tie on for 14, 16 hours last night, and the work just keeps on going, you know? And so that is important to acknowledge and come alongside, as you said, the entities that are doing some of the good work and seeing how we can continue to support that and add our knowledge, skills, and abilities to make them even more effective, right? And get some synergies from that. Would you agree with that, Christina?
I'm getting oriented to the new platform. Sorry. Totally agree with that. And I would say number 4 would likely be number 3 being learning who we are. Number 4 being knowing what our resources and tangibles are.
All right.
And continuously reflecting how to improve it, how to bring them together.
I'm gonna make that number 5 because I put number 4 was looking at entities that were doing good work. And then I guess it's the same thing, right? 4A and 4B is kind of saying the same thing. Know what our resources and tangibles are. So, you know, based on what Sal was saying yesterday, and I think all 3 of us were in that meeting yesterday with public health. What are some effective ways that we can continue that conversation, that we can build on the resources that exist and then make those resources accessible to the community at large? Because I think folks are, as you're thinking about the response to that, because I think what happens is we know there's resources out there.
Yeah.
HS, KCR, but we work with these entities. Everyone else doesn't. I can't tell you what the Black church is down by Lions Field. I can't tell you where Pastor Manning's church is, right? And while I understand that I'm talking about the Black church because I'm a Black man, right? But by no means am I saying this is only about the Black church. I've had conversations with Rob and Stephanie, and they talk about, the issues that exist in the churches as they have grown up. So, this is important across the spectrum. This isn't limited to just the Black church. So I don't want to feel like folks aren't part of the conversation because that's not what they're tied to. I'm using that kind of as my framework of my understanding to go forward, just to be clear.
Yeah. I'm glad. Go ahead.
Oh, no. What can we do? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, 2 years ago, when right before the pandemic jumped off, we were doing an initiative that was called Move and Be Moved. And every MLK, every Black History Month, we tried to provide resources, social justice, human rights, resources, racial justice resources. We put together a Move and Be Moved directory that had all of the organizations within Kitsap and even beyond Kitsap that were doing some of this social and racial justice, human rights work. And we put that together as a resource so that we can begin to connect these organizations. And so we began to do that work. And we've been doing a lot of the work with Kitsap Erase Coalition. Kitsap Surge has been working tremendously for a long time. Even the human rights, Kitsap County Human Rights. We've been doing a lot of the work, but when I look at the way we connect, is not the word, and because I want to be careful with the language, because language is very important, the language that we use. And so a lot of the organizations are not very inviting, where I can go down to a community resource as a Black woman and feel like I'm not being treated the same, or those resources are not being allotted, or I have access to them the same way someone else. And that's not just that organization. There might be, the Kitsap Housing, many different organizations that is within our communities. So how do we deal with that? Because I do believe that, like you said, yes, we've got resources and everything, but then it's the engagement piece, how we're engaging, how welcoming are we? Are we welcoming? And then we give access, but to who, is it done in a equitable way? There's lots of variables when we talk about, how we're going to move forward to do this work. So let's, and you say, well, we don't want to always bring it to always a race thing or anything, but discrimination is at the core of the inequities and the disparities of this work that we're trying to undo, which we say we're trying to undo in our community and in our county. So if we want to dance around those foundational issues that continue to throw up barriers for us, we're never going to get to a place where we can heal, reconcile, or repair the breach that has occurred over so much of our history here. So I've got a lot that I think about when it comes down to how we will enter in doing equity and inclusion work in Kitsap County, because I've been here, we received the orders back in 1992, and I came to this county and I was shocked. I was, our family was one of the only African-American families on Bainbridge, and the racial bullying and pushback and things that happened with my children as well as with our families over that 30-year period of time has immersed me into activism, because of all of those experiences that my children and my family encountered. And so when we talk about, how we want to get resources and everything, I think there are some core things that, and we have to be courageous enough to talk about them, because everything is not equitable. And for us to say they are, we are perpetuating a falsehood within within our communities and with the organizations, even if they're service organizations. I understand, during this COVID, that all of those things they were really brought to the surface and highlighted the disparities and the inequities that have been going on for a long, long time in our county. And no, I can tell you right now that it wasn't until George Floyd and a pandemic that there was a shift in the paradigm that in Kitsap County to even want to step into doing this equity work at the level that we're trying to do it now. So those are my thoughts.
Christina, do you want to build on that or respond?
Well, Marwan, I think that's one of the reasons why I hesitate coming on the podcast, is because I think you're seeking like actionable or solutions, right, in the answers, and it feels like there's actually some deep thinking around what the answers are, because there's a lot of there's the process of healing and having and building the relationship and the trust. I feel like that's the big step to collective work, and I don't know how else to describe it. I don't know there's no one path to it. Every individual is different on the giving and the receiving end. So I want to build this list of 1 through 6, but I don't know how to describe that piece of how important it is, because I love, like you said, when you've said it in the podcast before, maybe it was in May of this year, June of this year, the 4 of us got together at Marvin Williams Center, and it, we ebb and flow when it comes to trust, right? We got to keep talking, keep communicating, keep checking in. And what I love, I think, from the governor of Canada, who talks about reconciliation, it's not an end. It's an ongoing daily process. And I think when we start behaving or living that in that way, then maybe we'll get towards being stronger together. And anyway, that's me getting philosophical and
No, that was
having no
right on,
straight
right
answer.
on. I mean, that's right on, right on. Because at the base of all of this, we already know the atrocities. We already know the history. We've been identifying whether they want to label it racism, discrimination, violation of this and that. We know where we are in this nation with this work. But when we have to begin now to move it into a place of truth, reconciliation, healing, repair, reparations, restoration. We've got to move into that area of this work. We spend too much time labeling it and languaging it and identifying it, and they want to stay in that, keep going around the mulberry bush with that, and ain't nobody doing no work.
Yeah, so let me build on what Christina was saying. And yeah, tangible ideas and pathways forward are really important to me. But as you say, this work is really big. And so I'm not necessarily advocating so much for what is the answer right now, because it's and both, right? It's all of the above, A through Z, and then some. But we have these really powerful conversations in our siloed spaces, and silo doesn't mean bad, right? I mean, I've got an organization, Okoye's got an organization, you have your organization. We do work within our organizations, and then we come together like a Venn diagram, and we get synergies that way, and then we do work. But the community at large doesn't benefit from actually being at the table while those conversations are happening. So I think one of the ways that the conduit can be an asset is creating a space where we have these conversations where other people can join in, right? And listen and benefit from that. And I kind of lean back on the villaging our voices. And this Saturday, one of the things that I said to the group was,
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to go toward the end, in the circle. So I get to listen to everyone else's answers. So I know what I'm thinking in my mind, but this person says this, and it's like, oh man, I didn't consider that. And then this person says that, and it's like, oh man, that sounds good too. And then the next person says this, and it's like, oh man, that's awesome too. And then by the time it comes to me, now it's like, oh man, I've got all these other things now to consider. And maybe my response changes, maybe it stays the same, but it reinforces whatever I'm sharing, because now I have more ideas to pull from and add to the conversation. So that's what I hope, that we can have some of the conduit can be, hey, look, you know what, we're just going to have a conversation here, and more voices will be at the table that isn't here. Now, what I would say is the number 6 then would be, if we need to know, number 5, know what your resources are, what the tangibles are in the community, the number 6 should be, know what you bring to the table. What are
Yeah.
your knowledge, skills, and abilities? What can you add to the conversation? And even if you don't know that, by coming in and having that conversation, you do add something, right? And I go back into the chat, and I go to what Mark said. So when I was talking about, let me just scroll up here. I was talking about the KSURJ. I didn't know what it was, and Christina was like, that is the Kitsap showing up for racial justice. And what Mark's response was SURJ question mark. Yes, social justice focused on racism, right?
Yes.
So he's looking at it as, kind of what Okoye is saying. So, you guys are just talking about racism and everything is just through the lens of racism, but how do we end up moving forward, right? And so it is a different perspective, but then he actually adds one of the tangible bullet points, and then is actually trying to move forward in his knowledge, skill, and ability, and say, hey, well, I know this. I know how to, I believe that I have a skill set on doing some community building, which is centered around, resiliency and emergency preparedness. Then this could be a transferable skill that can be applied into community building, right? And what it takes is the grace to say, okay, you know what? He's not there yet. He sees it from his lens. We don't agree with that lens, or a lot of people don't agree with that lens, but how are we going to still come together and move forward, right? And that's why I went out and I talked to the white nationalists or the white supremacists, or however people want to label them. They may be all those things. And I'm very quick to let folks know, if you hate me, I don't have a problem with hating you back. I'm selective in what parts I take of the Bible too. So I'm not turning the other cheek. Sorry. You know what I'm saying? But that's how I feel about it, right? That's the space that I'm in right now. So, yeah, if I say, what do you think, or what's going on, it's not necessarily that we need the answer. It's just I just want to dialogue it, right, for others to have the benefit of hearing the conversation and maybe getting something from that. And maybe we won't know what comes of that, but they may take it back to their circle and build community in their circle. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Marwan, I really appreciated how you reflected on villaging our voice and your experience there. What you're modeling, or what I hope we all take away from that, is the benefit of listening, and the benefit of listening to other perspectives that are different than our own, and then kind of bringing that, trying to bring that in to finalize our answer. And if that's what you're saying about is the conduit also a channel for this? Absolutely. If you're willing to let people jump in on the podcast and chop it up like Akuye is doing right now, and then they could do it through chat and comments, and hopefully Sal comes back. I mean, as long as we're listening to each other. So I think there's a number 7 of, active listening to consider, right? To consider where we're moving forward towards. Like, I think we all have a similar goal, whether it's Kitsap Resiliency Project, whether it's Living Life Leadership, Gather Together, Grow Together, Kitsap Strong. I think we're all moving towards the same direction. I think we just have different angles on it.
And to that end, we may be moving. You say we may be moving in the same direction. Like we say phraseology like that, but when you think about what that physically looks like, this person may be coming from the mountains and they've got to go up and around and get through the snow and everything else, and someone else is walking through the sandy beach, but we're walking to the same place, but their perspectives are so far apart, and they may be thinking different things, right? I'm trying to take care of beach issues in that environment, and this person is taking care of mountain issues, but we're all trying to live in a space, and this is the way they're coming at it.
They say if you,
If I were to give you
they say if you
noise on the line there,
you're bilingual, you speak one language, you're American. And that's another thing. What does it mean to be American?
Koya, maybe you want to mute.
All right, that was Okoye. If there's a number 8, then I might say that it's giving grace. And we've talked about this, also when when the 4 of us met, I wasn't sure what I was into, but it quickly turned into a space where I could have felt like I really needed to defend myself, and I was going to take this personal, and it was going to be a combative fight, right? And instead, I chose to look at it in a different lens of, all right, I'm going to listen, like you said for number 7, Christina, and I'm going to fall back and raise my emotional intelligence. And I'm just going to go ahead and mute you, Okoye, because you got something going on there in the background. It's coming through on the thing. Just raise your hand when you want to talk. And if I wasn't conscious of that and I was in my feelings, then that conversation could have gone a different way, and we wouldn't be here today with the progress that we've made, right? And I think the same goes for everybody else that was at the table, right? They could have said, you know what, it's all about, saying my piece, and you could say I'm listening, but I'm only listening to jump in to respond to what it is you're saying or build on my point, because that's what's most important. You're going to hear me, but we all had to be accountable in that space. And that's what allowed, this relationship to blossom so quickly, right? Even though, we've had this conversation, we still didn't know each other from Adam, but it was like, you know what, we're going to go on faith. We're going to give the benefit of the doubt, and we're going to go forward. And we were able to create what we have here today. What do you think about that, Christina? And I should find a different phrase before you jump in. When I say, what do you think about that? It's really, I just want to hear from the next person type thing, Do you have a response comment?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the language you choose. And I think that over the times we've been talking, every time we've tried to communicate, or we're in a position, I have really appreciated when we just are going to go for the hard truths and sit in discomfort a little bit. It's been hard for me, but it's been a growing experience, and I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys giving me that space to be part of that. And I think, Marwan, there was one time you had, if you don't mind me saying this on the podcast, you had said my EQ is low, and that was a signal for me, and that was helpful for me to have that language, because it was an invitation for all of us to just be real. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
And I don't know if you were listening when I was talking about being vulnerable and showing people, parts of me that I don't typically outwardly show, right? In order to help them to grow, right? And to be vulnerable. But that's one of those vulnerable pieces where it's like, look, I need to be able to have a full range of emotion. And in that, my EQ is down. I am frustrated. I may be angry. I may be defensive. And so I'm going to say or do something in this space that may not be my normal response if my EQ was higher, or in its normal space where I am listening and taking things in and trying to grow and build community and build relationship. Uh, and so I think that's to give that cue is something that I'm learning how to do more, but also being vulnerable and trying to say, you know what, I'm going to need to trust you. We can always wait and say, you know what, I'll trust you when you trust me. I'll do this when you do that. You forgive, I forgive, right? And if we all wait for the other person to do it, well, we all going to be waiting for a long time. So someone's got to say, you know what? All right, it'll be me. Go ahead. And, I'll take it.
Well, and appreciated you doing that. And actually, I'll admit, I removed my ego out of the conversation, right? Because had I just been reading your the way you felt in the moment, then it would be about, I'd make something about me, and I didn't have to make it about me, and we just stuck to like what the goal we were trying to move forward on. So I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. Okoye? You're not muted unless you muted on your side.
I think she'll give us a signal if she's raring to jump in.
Okay. All right.
So I do love number 8, give grace.
So what is that?
And
What does grace look like to you?
I think that's kind of an inward and an outward act, right? So and kind of drawing on what I was saying about the the ego and the self, it's just being able to just move forward and not get so hung up on some of the emotions and the details that we typically do, because there's just something bigger than us that we're moving forward towards. I guess I just have a quick question. Do you know, was Mark on this call, or he was just commenting? Mark?
No, he was just in the chat.
Oh, he was in the chat. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, that's good. I just would really love to hear more about his hope and vision for building community.
Oh, I think you will. I think you'll see him in these spaces a lot more often, kind of going forward, which I'm excited about. So I amended number 8 to build on what you were saying, and I said, give grace both ways, to others and to yourself.
I appreciate that. And then when I think about how to do that in action or in application, thinking about, I don't know, I don't even know if I can go there tonight, but it is the question of how do we navigate during this pandemic our differences. Like, I think there's a lot of disagreement on positions of how to move forward and be healthy and recover as an economy, and I'm just hoping that I can find that number 8 in me to still listen and hear someone, and one, find common ground, but two, stand my position, and hope you have something to say, Akuye?
Yeah, I'm very glad that we're talking about, how to give grace both ways, to others and to yourself. One of the things I'm learning even now at this point in my life is that, who taught you how to give grace?
Mm.
Because it is a social construct. Who taught it to you? Who modeled it for you? Who cultivated that in your life? See, that's important. Those questions are important questions to ask, because, we say to people, oh, you should give them some grace and some mercy. And I grapple with that, because I know that we have been socialized um, in our bringing up, in our schools, in our communities, in our society as a whole, social media. We're being socialized. Who who taught you how to give grace to somebody? That's a real good question we need to ask ourselves and ask others, because we want that. We want to be able to receive it, and we want to be able to give it. But who taught you that?
I think some people would say, the Bible, right? Definitely, I know I would say my father. Uh, he was good at getting you told. He would get you read, but he wouldn't curse you out. He wouldn't disrespect you, but he would put you in your place. It was a gift. And he can make you feel this big if necessary. But it was also in love. I think of what he used to say, about, like nosy folks, uh, so, well, how much money do you make? And, well, tell me about this, or what's that? And he would say one of his stock answers would be, oh, you wouldn't be interested in that. That wouldn't interest you. And that was giving them grace to say, you're stepping over the line without saying, that ain't none of your business. Well, why you even got the nerve to ask me that? How much you make? Well, and so that was a way of just saying, hey, that bridge too far, with allowing them to save face, and they can fall back and continue on with the conversation. And he would continue to engage with them. He wouldn't just, say that and then walk away. He would, then kind of build on that. So how you doing? Sarah, how's your day going? So tell me about, and let it, and just go from there. But then that let it be known, look, you don't need to know about how much I'm making. That's a personal question, and we don't have to have that conversation again. But I can still be pleasant and enjoyable. We can have, other conversations and whatnot. And so I think that was a real powerful way. How about you, Christina? Where did you learn grace from?
It's a similar experience. So, and I appreciate the question. I was stuck in my thoughts when you asked it, Akuye, the social construct piece, and where did I learn it from? I think very easily I can answer the how did I give grace to others? It was family, my family construct. That is culturally, it's like we try and help others look good. We help each other look good. But when it came grace to myself, that actually was not something that that I learned. I don't know that anyone's modeled that for me. It's been my own journey to give grace to myself, and it was more of a survival tactic. So in the moment of grief and loss, I had to there's a lot of forgiveness, right? Because for me there was a lot of regret, and that's where I kind of touched closely into giving grace because of just losing a loved one and learning how to get through that.
No, we want to hear from you, Okoye, and where you got grace. One other space that I wanted to say that where I learned how to give myself grace was when I was in the classroom at Olympic College. I was a non-traditional student, had a ninth grade education, got my GED 2 days after turning 16, and didn't step foot into an academic space aside from training to become a brick mason until I was 24. And so when I ended up back in the classroom and teaching, uh, particularly non-traditional students, the stakes were so high, right? Many of them already had kids. Some folks are coming out of incarceration, trying to manage addiction, and some people are dealing with multiple all at the same time, not having adequate resources, transportation, things like that. And so if they did bad on a test or on an assignment, or they were struggling with whatever it could be, computers, they would be tremendously defeated and down on themselves, and they could not forgive themselves for performing so horribly. And so it became one of the staples. Also, I taught general studies courses, so how to learn, how to be effective, what are your learning styles, right? What is the teacher's teaching style? If the teacher is auditory and not as visual, I'm an auditory teacher, I talk a lot, right? How can you use your learning style to benefit when they're not teaching in your learning style, in your preferred style? So giving them that skill set and saying, hey, you are just trying to be adaptable in the space that you find yourself in. So give yourself grace. Mark talked about the four agreements, and that it was a book that I actually used to teach from at the college also. And so always doing your best. And what that means is you're not always going to do your best it's not going to look the same at all times, right? When I had COVID and I was super sick, my best isn't going to be the same when I'm feeling great and I've had a good day and I've been well rested and whatnot. So that was another space where I learned how to give grace, because I could see myself in my students sitting in the classroom. So Okoye, jump in there. I wanted to add that, because a lot of times I think folks might fall back to religious beliefs or their parents or whatever, but you may have found it in some other avenues too, some different ways.
I'm so appreciative for the Conduit and for those that are here, so that we can really have these deep conversations about, at least about this issue. I think when we're talking about giving grace, and where we learned that from, you know, we should understand the journey of life will teach us about grace, about love. Who taught you how to love somebody? Who did that? And that happens from the time we come into this world, the time we are born. We come into a place that is nurturing us, that are loving us, and having patience with us. I mean, if you don't gain any patience having a newborn uh, crying and getting up at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning and changing, there are things that are being cultivated and things that are being built in you, and nurtured in you, and grace comes along with that, to be able to you don't go out and say, oh, I give you grace. Those things are learned, um and built in you as you begin to grow in life. And no, when I was young and I was a kid, I didn't know anything about grace. I just wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. I didn't know how to share. I didn't know how to be social with others. Those are things that was, that we develop as we grow. When they talk about them terrible twos, and they talk about, these different developmental stages in our lives, and as we grow in life, we understand the depth of giving grace. We understand what love is and compassion is, all these different things, and seeing it modeled with our parents, or with teachers, or with friends, or even in community. And so some people think, oh, it's just this is a B C D E F G, we're gonna check off the check, we gonna check off the boxes and we got these things. It don't work like that. And so as we begin to talk about it, that's part of our culture, and how we've been socialized. And I think that that's one of the things that we're grappling with now in society, because we've been socialized by social media, and we've been socialized by this and socialized by that. And so when we talk about the foundational principles of love, compassion, charity, we don't talk about those things enough. We don't talk about them in a way, but they are foundational principles we need for life. And so I struggle with a lot of, what I call social and emotional and cultural competency, and all of these labels they want to give all of these, these challenges that we're having with behavioral health and everything. And we can really trace it back, the roots to how we've been socialized. And so let's talk, let's just be transparent and talk about those things as well.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. And so I would add, Christina is going to have to drop off. So we definitely thank you for coming on, Christina. And you can come up anytime and have a conversation.
My two favorite people, Miss Deborah and Martita. Anyway, thank you for letting me jump in. I'm gonna jump out. You
Yeah,
guys,
jump in, jump out, and we would hope that many of our community members would jump in and jump out. This is a conversation that we want to have with one another. So this is what our hopes and desires are, is that we can have these conversations and be transparent with one another.
yep. Thank you for making it safe. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Now, what I will say is, I can't always guarantee it's going to be safe, because safe is perspective, right? What's safe to you may not be safe to me. And that's one of the things that I've shared with Christina before. I think sometimes, well, as we're talking about, as you were saying, Okoye, how do you begin to deconstruct and do this work, and you're trying to do it in a space that's equitable, like all the buzzwords, right? That's safe and this and that. Well, you know what? Every space isn't going to be safe, and so if we are, I almost feel like it should be respectful, instead of safe. But everyone has their different perspective on it, and the reason why I think that way is what's safe to you may not be safe to me. But if I'm respectful and if I'm listening, right, and we really understand what those words mean, that if I'm offended, then you would apologize genuinely, right? And you're not going to do that again because you don't want to offend me. That is not what you're trying to do. And I think, if we could start changing our mindset on how we look at these things, then we actually can make progress. So I say number 9 should be try something different. Try something different, right? We've been going down these same roads, and what is the saying? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So as long as we can keep making committees, we can keep making spaces for the leaders, to come together. We can even invite one or two other leaders into these spaces. And now we just have bigger silos that have been created, while you have these folks that are making these decisions on what best to do, but we don't have a space where we're actually making change because more voices are heard and are at the table, and we have a more complete picture as to what to do as we go forward. Go ahead. I see you hand on the mute button there. Go ahead, okay.
No, I'm listening, and I've got to jump off here in a minute, but as we move forward, how do we actually build and provide a place to develop this work? I know that Mark had spoke about, the churches early on, and what can we do to get back and build community? What is it that we really must do to be able to unify and strengthen and support and give grace and cultivate, and let's let's move it to that, because I think that I'm here to listen and I'm here to learn. That's where I'm at. I'm here in hopes that we can do something different, and we can begin to allow the community to have a space to have these conversations. That's some of my hopes and desires. And so
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so, based on that action item, I think number 10, because we like our, nice little 10 list, right? Subscribe, like, and share, and participate in the conduit, right? What we're trying to do, what we have an opportunity to do, is create a space where voices can be heard, where we can take the conversations that are happening in board meetings or in committee meetings or in, family homes or wherever the case may be, and have these conversations here in an open space where folks can come respectfully, and have that in dialogue and start to find out where our commonalities are. Yep, I don't agree with you religiously. I don't agree with you politically. I don't agree with you. We can find all these places that we disagree and where we have these differences. But where do we agree? And that can be our foundation to kind of go forward. I think we all love our children, right? For those of us that have children. Well, that may be a space that we go forward, right? You're going to raise your children differently, and we can go right to the, wearing a mask hurts them. Well, wearing a mask protects them. We could go to that, but then you're going to the end, and again, you're going to the divisive piece. So let's build on the things that are alike, right? We want to make sure that they get the best education. We do want to make sure that they're safe. We want them to be able to know that they're loved, right? So things of that nature. So let's have those conversations and build. And it's going to be hard work. We have to start over. We have gone down a dark road for a very long time. You don't get to just hop off that road and then all of a sudden you're back on the right road, and you got to make up for lost time. The toothpaste is already out of the tube. The milk has already been spilled. All we can do is clean up the milk and go forward from there. So we've got to travel back on the road that we just came down, which means that we got to deal with the trauma that we've created, right? Or that we've experienced, until we get back to that starting point and say, now we can go forward and we can go down the right road. And now we've learned from all of the tragedies, all those potholes, all the trees down, all those accidents in the road, and we can navigate those more effectively, because it's still going to happen. Even when you go down the right road, you're still going to hit a pothole. You're still going to hit a tree that's down, but now you know how to navigate it effectively and work as a team.
True that.
Yeah.
True that. Yeah, that's it. No, we have to start somewhere. So might as well start now.
Yep, that's it. And you can, right? You can. You don't have to wait. The government's not going to fix this for us, federally or locally. Our leaders, I don't think, are going to fix it for us. And everyone can be a leader. And that's a whole nother thing, is should they? But everyone can be a leader, right? So
can I say this?
Yeah.
Everyone is a leader. But what type of leader are you? Everyone is a leader. You take leader. I teach my Living Life Leadership students when they come in. I said, it's not that you're not a leader. It's not, no, you are a leader. Did you get up this morning? What did you do this morning? Did you take leadership to get out the bed, to brush your teeth, to go wash your tail? Did you go cook breakfast for your siblings because you're the oldest? Did you have any responsibility? See, you have to take leadership in everything, from the time that you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed. Because you know what? You can lay in the bed all day long. If you don't want to move your tail and go take a bath and stuff, hey, I'm making it plain and foundational that we all have to play a leadership role. It takes leadership for you to get up and go to work. It took leadership for us to come on here and just have this conversation. It takes leadership in every aspect of your life, to cook food, to clean your house, to go to work, to drive a car. All of that takes leadership. And they make leadership like it's some lofty thing. No, you got to take leadership for life every day. So no, let us start with and level the playing field. People say, oh, I'm taking leadership. And I say, tell me what you do. Tell me what you do. And the kids begin to tell me all the things that they've done. And I said, well, that's important. Those are values. Those are principles that you take, and you're cultivating them every day. And you're a leader. To do that, it takes leadership. So yeah, you are a leader. And see, that removes that barrier for them thinking that leadership is something that they can't obtain because they're doing it every day. They're being leaders every day. It takes leadership to get up and go to school. It took leadership for you to do your homework. No, yeah, it even took leadership for you to step in and diffuse some you scrapping with your homie.
Hey, you know what I love about what you're saying there is a lot of times we have this conversations and it's centered toward adults, but what you've done is you've brought that down and said, hey kids, this is what you can do too, right? Because it's oftentimes the generation, the youth that change, how adults feel, right? When they say you're the future, you are the future, right? So you can be a leader now. I know there was a time when I had to take 3 of my siblings across town on the public bus in Seattle, all the way from Rainier Beach to the Central District to get them to Catholic school and then
That's
get them
right.
back. And I hated it, you know what I'm saying? Because I didn't want that level of responsibility on me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what if something happens to them? What if I lose them? We're on this public bus. This is crazy, and then, they're acting up. You ain't dad, so you got to deal with all those things. But all those are lessons and maturity and learning how to lead. What I wanted to add to your leadership piece is you also have to be able to follow, right? It's easy to tell people what to do, but that's not leadership, just bossing folks around. Can you also follow people? And then that's a conversation we have to have.
Well,
big one. We got a lot of chefs, but we don't have enough cooks. We don't have enough sous chefs. Everybody.
Let me say this to you. You cannot work with Living Life Leadership until you're ready to be a servant leader. We do service learning for our leadership building and our when we go and we do our trainings. No. There's no big I's and little U's and it's none of that. You have to show us that you can be a servant leader. That's why we do service learning projects. That's when you go and you learn how to serve others, and then you got to learn how to, what we do, taking it back home. How are you going to apply this in your everyday life? That's why it's called Living Life Leadership. You got to develop leadership for life, period. And that's for all of us. It's not for just the adults. It's not just for those that are working in these positions. It's for every single one of us in our lives. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to relanguage this leadership thing that they keep on saying, leaders. No, servants. You have to learn how to serve to become a leader. And if you're a leader and you don't know how to serve the community that you're leading, that's a problem. And we've got a problem with that right now. And so, yes.
And that goes back to the learning piece, right? And listening.
That goes back to learning.
Leaders that feel like they are doing service, servant leadership, and they may be in one aspect, but missing the mark in several others, right?
Yeah.
And it's, well, no, I serve. I'm the pastor of a church, so I serve my flock every weekend. I'm doing all this and I'm doing all that, but you're siloed off and you're not, creating relationship and allowing people to build and grow. You might even be doing that in your own church or as a manager or over your own department, right? Because you are fearful of someone outshining you. People maybe wanting to listen to them more, right? Because you have the authority of position, right? But if you are a servant leader and you know yourself, right? And you're saying, hey, I'm not going to be perfect. I can make mistakes, right? But I'm going to go forward. You're always going to get, my best effort at the time that I'm giving it. Then I don't think you really need to worry about someone coming in and doing that, right? Because people respect that. They see it. This is who we've chosen to follow. This is who our leader is. And these are the reasons why. But you do need to share the power that you have. G2 doesn't exist if it's, yep, this is how it is. And, I'm cracking the metaphorical whip And if you don't like it, then kick rocks. I didn't step foot in that building today. But G2 did everything that it needed to do today. And it did it yesterday and the day before. And all through COVID and before COVID. And I just presented to St. Michael's Hospital today. And I was saying, we're 3.5. It's like, oh, you know what? We're actually 4 years old in February. Right? We're still here. And we're still here because other folks have to share in the decision making. Other folks have to share in that power. Yeah, I'm the head coach, but there's defensive coordinators, there's offensive coordinators, there's the quarterback coach, there's the defensive line coach, right? There are all these other folks that are also part of the team that are calling shots and giving their ideas. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go with all of those ideas, but you're going to be heard. We're going to listen, and we're going to come together, and we're going to grow. I want to give you the final thought, Okoye. I know you got to go.
One of the things I'll leave the Conduit with and our community with tonight, it's good to do some self-reflection, especially when we're talking about leadership. We always, with our Living Life Leadership students, we always do asset mapping chart on leadership. And what I ask those students to do is put on your chart every value or everything you want to see in a leader, whether it's patience, whether it's communication skills. I want you to fill up this paper with every value you want to see in a leader. And they take a couple of minutes, and some of them, and I tell them, you can make it an art project. As long as I'm seeing, some of these different things that you value in a leader and you want to see in a leader. And when they finish, we go down their list and I ask them, do you have that? Do you have that? They say, yeah, I got this, I got that, I got that. And you have to begin to cultivate and transform their mind and understanding what's important, what they want to see in those that is serving them as leaders. And then I say, on the other side, I want you to put all the negative things. Because we want their understanding to be fruitful, to understand that these values come in people too.
Mm-hmm. Facts.
And so, it's a powerful exercise for young people, anybody really, to do. And then do reflection with those charts with our young people. It's a powerful exercise, and we do it every time. You can't come and start working until you do that, because we have to set the tone for them understanding their role as servant leaders in our community.
Maybe we could do a podcast where we actually take a few people through that exercise so we can model what that looks like. I think that would be awesome. And that's what I mean about, access, right? It's like, we need to do the work, and this is what you need to do. And then folks are trying to find the space to do it. And we know that people are they're social distancing. They don't have access, right? We were having a conversation before, and anyone can type this in the chat. That'd be great. We were trying to figure out, well, when's the best time to do the show? When is the best time to do this work? Is it the weekend? And our response was, well, folks are tired from the week. They were at work. They're helping their kids through school. They're going through the trials and tribulations of the week. Well, what about in the evening? Well, they're tired from the stuff they went through during the day. Well, what about Wednesday? Well, it's Bible study. Well, what about Friday? What's choir rehearsal? What about Sunday? Well, that's church. So when do you build that in, right? So if folks have ideas, how do you do that so that you can reach more folks? Do you offer it at different times so folks can come in and have access to it? These are where we need to get those ideas, right? Because one or two people aren't going to come up with all the answers. It's going to take everyone being involved, right? And you talk about democracy. I mean, that's kind of a way to it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and give you an applause because I know you got to go. We will be back tomorrow night with another show at 5. I'm going to continue on because I do want to go over the steps with you and kind of give the final thoughts. Like I said, I'm big on tangibles. You know, folks talk. I mean, Bible stories are great, and parables and metaphors and all those things, and oftentimes that can be very confusing in how to actively apply that. And sometimes folks do a good job of how to apply it. But you know, the question tonight, and maybe I should go back to that if I can find it here, was where are we at? How do we get back to building community? That's what we started the question off with this evening. How do we get back to building community? From my lens, I'm concerned, you know, with the Black church. I'm concerned with Black people. I'm Black first, right? But I'm also concerned with the community at large, right? My organization serves everyone, right? And we do things that do serve everyone. Everyone's hungry. Everyone needs transportation, right? People need job skills. People need a place to feel like they belong. Gather together, grow together is the name of the organization. It's for a reason, right? But we all have the spaces that we're coming from. And so that's mine. And so that's a concern. And we do know through history, recent history, that the Black church was a pillar in the Black community, and I think that has eroded. I'm going to reach out to a lot of the pastors here in the area. I went to the installation for Reverend Ellington, who is now Pastor Ellington, and Pastor Mack was there, and Pastor um, uh, Richmond was there, and Pastor Frankie was there. I can't call his last name right now. So, you know, you kind of switch in between names. And so it's interesting. You know, when I was raised, you never talk to an adult. You never addressed an adult by their first name. So it was always Mr. This and Mrs. That. Well, as you become an adult and you're on the same level as folks, it's a different thing. So it's like, what do I call you? You know, and some folks will insist on calling you their first name. So I always struggle with that. So it's like, Pastor Frankie, Pastor, or you know, first name, last name. How do I, you know? So you know, I kind of will fall back to kind of my childhood rearing in that way. So, but again, I think that's an important thing to get back to. But how do we get back to building community? We do know we see the state of the world today. We're watching all of the natural disasters that are happening across just the nation. We don't even have to talk about the world, right? And we got a volcano out there in Spain. We've got, you know, snow in Texas last year where they were out of power for a long time. We have forest fires. We had Hurricane Ida. We've got tornadoes. We have all these things that are happening. We have resources that are becoming ever more finite. We have more people that are food insecure. We have more people that are housing insecure. You know, folks are struggling. We're dealing with the pandemic right now. And then we're dealing with a very divisive country. And so, how do we navigate that? You know, our children are getting older and older. You know, my daughter turns 10 on Tuesday. You know, she'll be 18 in 8 years. That's a scary thought. What world is she going to transition into adulthood in? You know, what do I want it to look like for her? You know, what can I do to change it before she becomes an adult? What can I do now to make those to make those changes? And if you don't have any kids, you know, maybe there's nieces or nephews that you have, or just family members, or you just want to leave the world a better place than, you know, how you came into it and how you live in it presently. So whatever your motivation is, um, you know, what can we do to build back community? And this list is by no ways a final list. I think this is kind of a living document, if you will, but you have to choose to work together. It's a very difficult thing to make a choice to say, you know what, I'm going to work with this person that feels this way about me, or has this viewpoint about this particular issue. That can be difficult, these are folks in your own community. I'm not even talking about you know, folks that are on the other side of what you think and what you believe. But these are folks that Could be in your own household, could be in your church, could be at your job, could be in your extended family. You've got to choose to work together. You've got to make that decision. Mark says, provide a way, a place, an event where people and organizations can come together and begin the conversation. Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do here with the Conduit, is be just that. Create that space where folks can have conversation, where people can talk about the issues and how they see the issues, what they believe the problems are, how they experience accessing organizations, what they think should be done to fix the situation. There was a time when Mark had never been on the Conduit, right? But he was invited on because of our theme of emergency management. So he was on with the county person and some other folks, and now he's a contributing member in the chat, right? It's that choosing to work together. That's that number one. And then with number two, he's provided that, right? Because we'll get to the listening, but that's the listening, right? So providing that space, that event where people and organizations can come together. As I said before, we all have our committees, we all have our meetings. There's 1,000 Zooms right now that we're all in, and it's great. And you know what? I'm in more Zooms than I've ever been in before. So there are good people and good organizations that are creating these spaces and being more inclusive and inviting people in. I've done 2 presentations in 2 days, right? Or in 3 days. I did one for St. Michael's and then one for perinatal care. And so I presented to probably, half a dozen other organizations over those days that I've never presented to before. So that's them creating that space. So again, I do want to acknowledge, as Sel was saying, there are people that are out here doing the work, and we do need to acknowledge that and not discount their efforts and their achievements, because they are achieving good things. Public health meeting, the equity committee that I participate in, which was on Tuesday, right? A lot of good folks that are in there doing the work. Kids at Public Health trying to do the work, right? That's what that looks like. That's what that looks like. So continue to create that space. But what I want to do is go a step further. All these folks are being more inclusive and inviting more people in, but I want everyone to be able to come together and have these conversations and let these ideas and solutions and, identifying, hey, you know what? I didn't consider that. That's an issue. Or maybe we could do it this way. That's where those solutions come from. So I think that's tremendously important there. Number 3, let me get down there, is learning who you are. Who are you? That's what Okoye was contributing to this one here. Who are you? And we went down a long story of, my background. I won't go back into that. But that is a lot to do with who you are today. What was your domestication? How were you raised? Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you think and value what you value? Understanding that is important. What is your history? Do you know your history? Do you understand your history? What do you need to add to that? What's missing? Number 4, look at the entities that are doing the good work. As I said before, Kids at Public Health, St. Michael's, perinatal care, just to name the things that I've done in the last 3 days. And I missed, because I sit on Commerce Equity Committee also. I missed that meeting yesterday. So these entities are doing the work. They're trying to do the work. And so it is important to acknowledge that. This work oftentimes is thankless, and often it's collateral duty. So it's important that we recognize and we acknowledge the folks that are taking the effort, the folks that come on at 5 p.m., the folks that watch at 5 p.m. It's 7 o'clock at night. Got to get dinner ready. Got to make sure the kids get settled in. Got to make sure they get their homework done. Your favorite show might be coming on here in a little bit if you still watch broadcast TV. You might need to grade papers. Might want to get into bed. Tomorrow, I think is what is it? Tomorrow's Thursday. Oh, Venom 2 comes out, right? Want to have some self-care. Was it ladies' night at the club? I don't even know if those things are open anymore. Might be dating myself. Number 4 also is know what our resources are. What are the tangibles? Okay. What are the tangibles? Really hard to know where all of the resources are. Who can help? How do they help? How can you help? And it may be that you're not getting involved with an organization, but you're sharing one organization to another organization. You know what? I actually used G2 and they do this. And hey, you know what, St. Michael's? You might benefit from your patients knowing about G2 for whatever reason, A, B, or C. Connecting. We're a small community, but at the same time, we still don't know each other, right? We're definitely better together. And if we can leverage what we do well, we're going to work past our differences a lot faster and come up with other solutions. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be happy, but we got to start somewhere. But know what our resources and tangibles are. That is a huge one. But then you also have to know, what do you bring to the table? What are your knowledge, skills, and abilities that you have? And you have them. And as I was saying before, when Okoye was talking about leadership and was saying, getting up and going to school, doing your homework, helping out your younger siblings, right? This is for children too. This is for kids too. We all bring something to the table. So what is it? I think back in the summertime, shout out to Daniel and Sabrina, and oh boy, the name escapes me. So many folks, but they had their kids in helping us to make meals during the summertime. We were making 1,000 meals per week, right? And the kids were helping with that. It gave them a sense of belonging. It gave them a sense of accomplishment. It showed them how to do community service and to give back. It gave the parents and the kids to work alongside each other and do some love and some family bonding. So everybody has these knowledge, skills, and abilities. What are yours? What are yours? Number 7, active listening. This one is said in so many different spaces. I taught communications at the college. We know the difference between active listening and just hearing. We talk about it in work trainings and workshops and all kinds of spaces. We don't typically practice it very well, though. And what we often may say is, I understand what you're saying. I hear you. I get it. I just don't agree. So, blah, 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 blah. Another course, they said teach business. And in international business, which is one of the courses that I would teach, I taught negotiations. And a really effective negotiator doesn't know just what their needs are. They know what the needs are of the person they're negotiating with or the entity they're negotiating with. What is it they want? What is it they need? And is there a way that you can give them what they want and what they need, and you still get what you want and what you need? That's the best type of negotiation, right? Because if it's win-lose and you're the winner and they lose, you don't think they're going to remember that the next time they have to negotiate with you? And if they ever get to a space where they have the upper hand on you, how do you think they're going to treat you? So it might be in your best interest to try to make it as much of a win-win scenario as possible. A lot of people don't think that way, right? It's like, oh man, I gotta get you because you might get me. Someone has a phrase that says, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I actually hate that phrase because how do I trust you if I feel like you're always trying to cheat me or beat me or squeeze something else out of me? Number 8 is give grace. Give grace. That can be very difficult to do. I don't agree with what you're saying. And again, we can make this as extreme as possible. Maybe you are racist, straight up racist. You hate black people. How do I give someone like that grace? Can I give someone like that grace? Should I give someone like that grace? I guess the question would be, to what end? What would be the purpose? So you got to answer that. And that's an extreme that I'm giving there, right? You've got your own extreme examples that are relevant to your life. What's the most extreme thing that you could say, I'm not giving grace to that? But that is so far apart. We typically don't deal in those spaces, right? The grace that we need to give may go to a 5, not to a 10, right? So where can you give grace? Where can you fall back and allow the person to be who it is that they are while they're operating at a shortcoming? Maybe they're not a great communicator. Maybe they're not effective at doing things the way that you would do them. Hey, I'm able to do this and that and whatever. And I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but I get it done. Well, that's you. That's not that person. So how do you give that person grace? You may not even know what's going on. But the expectation is that this person shows up in the space, and when they are short of that and they don't meet your expectation, well, you're a huge disappointment. You let me down. You betrayed me. And we may not even know what's behind that. We extended that to say, not only give yourself grace, but it has to be both ways. We are so hard on ourselves. We have that saying that, you're your own worst critic. You beat yourself up. I can't believe I did that. I don't know how I keep making the same mistake. I've dug a hole in my life so deep, and I'm looking at this hill of regret that I need to climb back up just to get back to my baseline. The life that I vision for myself is not the life that I have right now. I'm shamed. I'm embarrassed. I'm pissed. I'm hurt. I'm disgusted. Man, it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about that. The past is done. So give yourself grace. Are you trying to change it? Are you working on it? Do you have an active plan? Because sometimes we just kind of dog paddle and we don't go in any direction, right? Our arms are flailing and we feel like we're doing something, but we don't really have a plan. But we're like, look, man, I'm trying. You're trying to do what? Give yourself grace. Quit beating yourself up. You've beat yourself up enough. You've chastised yourself enough. Dust yourself off. Put your hand out. Let someone else help you up, because we also want to just do it by ourselves, right? Well, I got myself down here, so I just need to get myself out. I need to be independent. No, you need to be interdependent. And begin to grow and understand, sometimes it's going to rain. And as you're trying to climb back up that mountain to get to where you want to be, it's going to get muddy, or there's going to be a sharp rock that you're going to trip on and you're going to fall, or you're going to stumble. And as cliche as it is to say, it's not how you fall, it's how and if you get up. A lot of that is true. We're not going to be perfect. Every decision is not going to be perfect. Even when people are telling us, there's a hole there. Don't step in that hole. I know, because I stepped in that hole. Look at the scars. You're like, yep, I hear you. Well, you know what? I got to walk this journey myself. So if I fall into this hole, then so be it. Oh, that's kind of a different thing, right? Are you giving yourself grace? Are you giving yourself an out just to make mistakes and just do whatever? But give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. I found that in my example that I gave when I was teaching, that the students that used to really beat up on themselves, when they gave themselves grace, and I'm not saying that they stopped holding themselves accountable. That's not what grace is, right? Grace doesn't say, well, you know what? It is what it is. I'm going to make mistakes. Things aren't going to turn out well. And that's not on me. It just is what it is, right? That's not accountability. We're talking about two different things there. But my students that were able to give themselves grace could say, okay, you know what? I didn't do that well this time. And I'm going to do that self-reflection like Okoye talks about. What could I have done different? Could I have read the chapter again? Sometimes my students say, no, I read the chapter. Man, I read it 2 or 3 times. Okay. But you're speed reading it, right? I read it. You know how, if you remember back from being in school, whatever level of school you were in, right? You had the learning objectives. This is what you will learn from this chapter. A lot of people don't even read that. They just start reading the chapter, right? Then you start reading, you get through a page and a half, and then there's a check for understanding. This is what you should have learned in this paragraph. And they might ask you a question. Like, yeah, I don't really quite know it, but I'm gonna keep on going, right? I kind of got a good idea, but let me keep on going, man. I only got like an hour to get through this thing, and I got to start working on something else. Well, this person reads this fast, and they were able to get through it. They read it once and they understood it. Well, that's them. That's not you. You may have to do something different. You might have to read a sentence. Did I understand that sentence? Okay, good. I can go on. If I don't, I need to reread that. Did I get through this paragraph? Do I understand it? Kinda. Well, let me go back. One of the most powerful tools that you can use is having a conversation about whatever it is you're learning with someone else. They say when you can teach it to someone else, you really know it. So have a conversation. Talk to your kids about it. If you're in a learning situation, Okoye is in college right now. Have those conversations because it reinforces your learning, right? Again, these are transferable skills. And so for my students that said, you know what? Yeah, I didn't do what I wanted to. I didn't perform the way that I wanted to. Maybe I was sick for, a little piece here. So there wasn't much I could do there. But I could have chunked my chapters, chunking information. I could have talked to someone else. I could. Next time I'm going to be intentional about spending time in the tutoring center. I'm going to get a study buddy and give yourself grace. The students that were able to do that had better success. We think about athletes, right? Batting averages, free throw percentages, completion rates. So when you strike out, you got to come back up to bat. What is going through your head is, I'm gonna strike out again. I struck out last time. I'm gonna strike out this time. If that's their mindset, right? Golfers, I think they call it the yips. Then you can't perform because you're not giving yourself that grace. You're beating yourself up. So give yourself grace. I'm a big proponent of team sports, even in adulthood, because again, sometimes we miss those things when we were kids. We didn't have that opportunity. So you might consider doing those things. And volunteering is a great way to do that. Maybe it's not, in a being in a basketball league, but maybe it's volunteering. Maybe it's being part of an organism that is swimming in the same direction, trying to make change. Consider that. To that end, number 9, try something different. Try something different. We've got an opportunity now to do something different. Man, I've never done a podcast before. I damn sure haven't gone down and talked to people that think polar opposite from how I think. And have a conversation. How the hell would I drive downtown and go on Facebook and talk to folks that are like, you know what? We don't want vaccine passports. We don't want the vaccine. We don't want to wear a mask. You put poison in your body. Don't take the vaccine. Why would I even want to talk to those people? Because I need to do something different. And if I wait around for them to do something different, I might be waiting a long time. If I'm waiting on the government, the federal government, to do something different, I might be waiting a long time. Right? And let's be honest. Biden looks a lot like Trump in regards to your perspectives. If we're waiting on local government to do it, we might be waiting a long time. Mayor Durkin, right? She's not running for office again. So she said, you know what? We're going to do the eviction moratorium until January 15 of 2022. What is our mayor going to do? Well, it's an election year and he is running again. So it's not very likely that he's going to do something like that, right? Because that could cost him the election. So hopefully, maybe the governor bails him out. But what does he even think? Do we know? Try something different. Number 10, subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Conduit. Type my name in, Marwan Cameron, and subscribe. Like the content, share it. Participate in the chat. Make your voice heard. Let your opinions be known. Let's dialogue and come up with solutions together. And we may try something and it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then let's try something different. But let's try something. Submit your ideas. What do you want to talk about? What's important to you? Do you have ideas on how we can be more effective as a community, how we can grow community, how we can thrive? You have that power. And, as case in point, I've started lots of different shows. You remember it was Saturday nights with Tasia. It was 2x2 studies with the Rev, which our conversations are coming back. There's just a lot going on right now. Who else was I doing the show with? I am not afraid to try. And I used to say on the podcast, I don't lose. I either win or I learn. There is no lose. Because I'm going to learn when I fall short. I'm going to learn if this doesn't work out. I'm going to try something else. So I'm not afraid of that. These are the things that we can do. These are the 10 tangible things. There can be a lot more than 10. And hopefully you'll put those things in there. And once you've reflected on those 10, read those 10 steps and start your self-reflection, as Okoye was saying. Introspection is powerful. Where am I at? What do I want to do? What do I want to see change? How can I change it? Where can I change it? Who can help me change it? I would submit to you that obviously, if you get enough like-minded people to do something, yeah, you might be able to get it done. But man, if you can get the like-minded people, the people that may not be like-minded, or folks that had no idea that there were some commonalities there, or by helping you achieve that particular goal, they get one of their own goals achieved. Remember when I was talking about negotiations? And you can accomplish that. You know, the analogy of the matchstick, very weak when you break it and you snap it. But you take a box of matchsticks, very hard to snap. It's almost the end of 2021. We've lost a lot of folks. And not just through COVID, but we've lost a lot of people just period. A lot of relationships we've lost. Friendships, love interests, partnerships. What can you do today to build, to change, to collaborate? That's the question. And if you think about it, if you've been watching me since February or early on, I used to interview people and I had 10 questions because I started around Black history. So I was like, what does Black history mean to you? But then I also asked them, what's friendship? How do you define that? What makes a good friend? And I asked them, well, what's a good romantic relationship? How does that work? How do you deal with conflict in those situations? And we talked to Commissioner Gelder, and we talked to Tracy Flood, and we talked to, folks that are experiencing homelessness. We talked to all kinds of people, right? And we continue to do the work as it grows and it changes because we're building the plane. The internet was cutting out, my feed was cutting out, the cameras weren't working, all kinds of crazy stuff. Using this program and using that program, you just keep on going. Oh man, shout out to Stephanie. To respect does not mean to agree. One community, one hope, one family. I love it. Appreciate that. Little horn there for Stephanie. Absolutely facts. Absolutely facts. I hope this is helpful. Again, if you have any ideas, if you want to appear on the show, please reach out to us. You can send comments right in here. I do need to put our email up, but I need to type it in. Let me see if I can do that really quick. That's kind of long. It is the Conduit podcast show at gmail.com. I know it's a long one, but again, that's another example of people coming together to resolve issues, right? It's like, man, that's a long email. Can I make it longer? Just the other day, I was like, should we call it tcps@gmail.com. And people are like, well, what the heck is that? Right? Well, the Conduit podcast was taken. So this is what we came up with, right? But anyway, reach out to us with your ideas. If you want to appear on the show, if you think that there's someone that we should reach out and have on this show, please do. But again, subscribe, like, and share. And we will see you tomorrow, same time, 5 p.m., same bad time, same bad channel. I am Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit.